Hello. Hello to all the Cannes virtual delegates tuning in from around the world. Coming to you here from sunny London, where it positively feels like Cannes weather. I think we're all missing the physical festival, but it's cool that we're able to get together with friends from around the world for important discussions that still need to take place as the business tries to navigate this pandemic. So I'm joined by three great speakers. We've got Richard Lorber, who runs the distribution company Kino Lorber that has multiple streaming offerings, including Kino Lorber and Kino Marquee, which we'll discuss. We have Olle Agebro, who works for Draken Film, the Swedish VOD service launched by the Gothenburg Film Festival. And we have Jaume Ripoll, whose Filmin service is a key local player in Spain. Gentlemen, great to have you all with us. Apologies for butchering the pronunciation of your names there. Just quickly then, so they say that in every crisis, there is an opportunity, and the business has looked to digital outlets during this time in a bid to keep audiences, many of whom have been stuck at home and looking for fresh content during the lockdown. And while everyone has been figuring out how to keep their businesses afloat during these very tough times, it's not just been about profits. And we've seen some very cool initiatives launched by digital pioneers to support independent cinemas, which as businesses have been some of the worst hit in our industry. So our panelists here today all have been some of the leaders in setting up those kind of initiatives. So hello, guys. Thank you again for joining us. And just as a quick icebreaker, maybe you could tell us what you're missing about being in Cannes. Richard, do you want to start?
Well, I'm missing coming home to my favorite hotel, Hotel des Orangers, at the top over the highway. I've been going there for about 30 years, and it feels like coming home whenever I'm there. Other than that, Cannes is a blur.
Sounds about right. Olle, are you missing being on the Riviera?
Yeah, sure. we as we have our own film festival, we always try to watch as many films as possible when we're in Cannes, and only judging from today, I think it's going to be really hard to keep the concentration for like 7 films in a row on my laptop. So I guess we'll figure it out during the week.
Jaume, how about yourself? Are you busy this week with lots of Cannes stuff?
I miss the sales agents, the contact with sales agents. I miss them a lot. I think it's a personal, the personal contact. I think it's the thing that I miss the best.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, hopefully this will be an interesting discussion, and will make everyone, feel a little bit more like they've experienced some kind of festival this year. So, Richard, I'm going to start with you. This has been a really tough few months for distributors and exhibitors as well, of course. Maybe you could tell us a bit about how important the digital side of your business has been during this time.
Oh, sure. It has been a very exciting creative distraction from the pandemic, at the very least. We realized that we had a problem when the strongest films of our lineup were suddenly opening and closing within a week. Realized that we had to make some quick moves, and we were able to repurpose a digital platform we had built, a transactional VOD platform called Kino Now, into a streaming service that would make our films available to theaters digitally, and would create an opportunity to generate additional revenue for the theaters. So, within a period of mere 6 or 7 days, we built a whole new business for ourselves. And it became a dominating business, and we think it's a business that's going to continue and have key importance as we move into a whole new world of vision and cinema going.
So this is Kino Marquee, which, as you say, you kind of launched as an offshoot of your existing VOD service. And a key part of Kino Marquee has been that you've allowed audiences for your art house movies to also support some art house movie theaters in the process. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Exactly. We realized that the theaters who we've been working with for many years are not merely movie theaters. They're community cultural organizations. And they engage with their communities, their audiences. They have events, they have talks, they have exhibitions, and they're essential to the health, the cultural health of our country, and certainly to the world of cinema. We realized that the only way we could be assured of doing something for them is inventing something I'm calling filmanthropy, where we created a ticketing system where viewers purchase a ticket on our Kino Marquee site, and immediately half of the money that's purchased for tickets goes back to the theaters. And they don't have to do anything. All they have to do really is send messages to their communities and their audiences, and we do the rest. And it's working well. We started with 11 theaters, and by the end of the third week, we were up to over 300 theaters participating in the program. And now if you go to kinomarquee.com, you'll see we are offering about one new film a week, and cumulatively probably 12 or 15 films since we began the program. And it's going very well.
Wow, that's fantastic and amazing to hear so many people have kind of gotten into it. And clearly, the link between art house films and art house cinemas is crucial, and it's cool that people have been able to maintain that during this period. What kind of films have you been showing on the platform?
Well, the first film we showed was the film that just that won the jury prize last year in Cannes, Bacurau, by Kleber Mendoza and Giuliano Dornell. It was a very highly acclaimed film, which was much talked about, and we actually had opened it physically first, and then suddenly, after doing very well for the first weekend, every door closed, and it became our top grossing film in virtual space. Other than that, we also transitioned with the Ken Loach feature, Sorry We Missed You. It was another popular film at Cannes, and also the film that a Beanpole that won the director prize in, I think it was in Certain Regard, for Kantemir Balagov. All of those were films that were scheduled for physical release, and we pivoted to make them available virtually, and they've done very well. The first film that we launched digitally was the Studio Canal documentary, Capital in the 21st Century. We were unsure of how a film would fare that had not had any exposure in theaters prior, and we were very gratified to find that immediately over 200 theaters booked it, and it's still running and doing nicely. Cool,
fantastic. Quite a Cannes heavy selection there, which is nice to hear in the current context. And I'm going to traditionally the digital side of this business has been quite reluctant to share many facts and figures, but I will put you all on the spot and see what we can get out of you. Richard, can you tell us a bit about the take up of this, about the audience, perhaps?
Well, I think first you should contextualize it. A lot of distributors have been anxious about disclosing numbers because there's a different metric at play in the world of virtual theatrical releasing. It's not about the per screen average as you measure your opening success for the film. It's really more about the number of theaters that have come on board and how actively they're engaging their audiences. But we decided that as the first to do this really on a consistent basis, it was important to the community we're in to make these numbers known. So in the past 2.5 months, we've generated almost $700,000 in ticket sales across about a dozen or 13 films. And in that amount, half of which is going back to the theaters, we've expanded our theater base to almost 400 different screens, all independent and art houses and some very small art house chains. So we've had much more engagement from the theaters for virtual screenings than we were ever able to achieve in physical, for the simple reason that most of the art houses in the US are small physical plants with probably no more than 3 or 4 screens at most. Some still have 1 or 2. But suddenly a world of screen scarcity has become a world of screen plenitude. And the theaters have literally unlimited screen space. So many theaters that love our films but said they can't take them because they have to take the next big one coming from an A24 or a Neon or one of the other studio mini majors like IFC. We were basically shunted to the side. What we're doing now, as theaters begin to reopen, is starting a what I call a duplex releasing model, where we're making our films available both physically and digitally, sometimes staggered so that people will know it's only available in theaters in physical form, and the holdover is digital, or it could be simultaneous. We don't know how that's going to work out yet. This is all still changing and evolving very rapidly. We're still in the early days of virtual cinema, but there are some exciting possibilities, and we've realized ourselves that we've moved from being a film distributor to being a media and technology company. And that's going to affect our business overall in the next 5 to 10 years, I'm sure.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, fascinating to hear about this stuff, and we'll definitely talk later in this panel about how much we think the lessons learned over the last few months will be carried forward. But let me quickly ask you, do you intend to keep running Kino Marquee once this is all over?
Well, as I just suggested, I think it's going to be essential, because we all know the reality that a blockbuster sold-out show in an independent art house theater is going to mean a room that's no more than 30% full because of social distancing and sanitizing and limited shows. So the theaters are going to have to rehire most of their permanent staff, but they're not going to be able to generate more than probably 30 to 50% at best of their revenues. They're going to need supplemental income. And I think the opportunity for them to capture some of the digital revenues that would otherwise see their ticket buyers and audiences going to platforms like iTunes, Netflix, and Hulu are happy to pay to see the films on a virtual screen at those theaters, and give the theaters a chance to capture some of that digital income that they have never been able to get before.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Olle, I'm gonna move on to you now. So your streaming service, Draken Film, launched by the Gothenburg Film Festival where you were working. Just tell us a bit about the service.
So it's really a subscription VOD platform that's, or at least from the start, was based on the selection by the Göteborg Film Festival, and it also included films that were financed by the Göteborg Film Festival Fund. And now, over the past few years, we have pivoted to be more of a art house VOD platform with, I think now we have more than 700 titles, many classics, many films that didn't screen at the Göteborg Film Festival as well. But still, it's a curated selection, and it's still the programming team behind the film festival that's working with the VOD platform as well.
Yeah, cool. And so you have also supported art house cinemas in Sweden during this pandemic. Tell us a bit about your approach to that.
Yeah, I really recognize almost everything that Richard talked about. When the pandemic hit, we saw that as audiences moved away from theaters, they also started watching a lot more at our service, and probably others as well. And we figured that when we had all of these extra revenues, we might be able to support those that didn't really have any revenue at all. So we made this initiative where we decided to offer our new subscribers the option to select their favorite cinema, their local cinema, and they just had to write the name of it, and then we will give half of the revenues from that subscriber to that specific art house cinema for the next 6 months. So we started out with just a handful of cinemas, and now I think more than 100 cinemas have joined this initiative.
Cool. And what's the uptake been like from audiences?
So we're a niche service in a small market, but during the spring we have more than tripled our number of subscribers. So it means a lot to us, and also for the cinemas, of course.
Yeah. And you're a purely subscriber model. You don't do TVOD as well.
Yeah, it's only a subscription, and these new audiences that support their cinemas through us are part of our standard offer. So hopefully they will stay along for during this fall when the cinemas hopefully open as well.
Yeah, great. I mean, it's fantastic to hear that there's so much uptake. Like, you kind of sometimes get the impression that everyone's just been watching Tiger King for this whole thing, but obviously, the art house audience is still there.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of the content that you were able to premiere, during this. I understand that you might have been able to take some films onto the service that would have been theatrical normally.
Yeah, so in Sweden normally we have a theatrical window for at least like 4 months before film is released on VOD. But during the spring we have been able to do many day and date releases where a film opened at those few cinemas that actually have been open. And released on Draken Film simultaneously. So Ripoll, as Richard mentioned, has been one of them. A White Day, Mr. Jones, Skiing Birds, yeah, a few of them.
Cool. And what have been some of your best performing titles? Has it been local films, international films? Have people been seeking out classics during this period?
Yeah, we actually have had a few classics that have performed very well. A few old Sviagintsev titles. Agnes Varda has been doing really well over the past few months. But also, of course, like Richard mentioned, titles from last year's Cannes, like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, has done tremendously well. Ripoll, that we released just a few weeks ago, will also be one of the best performing titles of the spring. So.
Cool. I've been watching a lot of westerns. I don't know why. I'm not sure if anyone else has found that, but not something I would normally watch a lot of. But there we go. Jaume, tell us about Filmin. How have you guys been operating during the lockdown?
Bacurau is a Western, no? Isn't it? So Bacurau has been one of the great success in the platform in Filmin. We released it 1 month ago. So during this lockdown period, we've done a lot of business alongside with festivals and local distributors mainly. So regarding festivals, we hosted 5 festivals on our platform, from the Autor to Docs Barcelona, and now we have an LGBT festival from the Niemeyer Center. And regarding like premium VOD releases, we had a quite successful experience with Mathieu Maxime, the Xavier Dolan movie that we released alongside with Avalon Distribution in Spain. Then figures, I think I can share them with you because I think the film made more admissions in the first weekend in our platform than any previous Xavier Dolan film in cinemas in Spain, which is a huge success. And after Mathieu Maxime, we had a quite nice experience with helping some small Spanish movies that basically they wanted to go to theaters, but since theaters were closed, they choose Filmin as a solution. And the most successful movie was Asamblea, which is the first war directed by Alex Montoya, a guy who won Sundance 5 years ago. And the film made 30,000 admissions in Spain online, so on premium video on demand, which is also a nice figure. And And besides this, we launch the new version of the platform. We release Filmin Times, which is a new app for our site. So quite busy, I must say.
Cool. So you mentioned premium VOD, PVOD, which is another acronym that I have learned. So this is essentially it's a transactional purchase, but with a premium window. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's 5.95. It charges 5.95 at least in our platform. I think it's 6.95 in other different sites. And it's basically like a premium video on demand. And say in this case, in Xavier Dolan case, it was released prior the theatrical release. So basically, the Mathieu Maxime was available during 3 days, 2 months ahead its theatrical release. And in some other cases, it's like, yeah, it's a premium. It's like 1 month after the theatrical release, the film was available, was released on a platform, and then at charge at 5.95, 6.95. But basically, it's
Cool.
a transactional video on demand.
Yeah.
Only it's more expensive than usual.
Yeah. And you also have a subscription model as well, right?
Yeah, basically, Film is mainly a subscription video on demand platform, to be honest. And a lot of the films that has been available through the festivals has been available for our subscribers, which is important and a key to success.
Yeah.
And during this lockdown, it's important just to put a lot of content to a big audience, but on a subscription model. Otherwise, only on transactional, it will be hard for them to pay for those kind of titles.
Yeah, of course, of course. And so, have you seen a big spike in subscribers during this period? You said that your TVOD releases have been very successful.
In views, of course, in subscribers, the first month and a half, so March, late April, yes, we increased by 20% the number of subscribers. But since then, I won't say it's flat, but it's not the same level of growth that during the first 6 weeks.
Okay, interesting. And you mentioned there your work that you've been doing with film festivals in Spain. So you've, as far as I understand it, you've been hosting the online versions of festivals which have had to be cancelled by the pandemic. Can you tell us how that works?
Yes, basically, it was the same official competition, also the same lineup for the festivals that it's supposed to be on the theaters, and now it was on filming during the lockdown. Uh, in the case of Dautor, which is the main art house festival in Barcelona, we offered 65 feature films during 10 days. And in terms of views, 250,000 views during 10 days, which is an outstanding number. And regarding Docs Barcelona, which is documentary, the main documentary film festival in Spain, it was 45 films, also all available during those 10 days.
Brilliant. I mean, a quarter of a million, that must be much more than the festival would receive as a physical entity.
10, 10 times more than the previous year. So in terms of a traditional physical part of the festival, last year they made 18,000 admissions. So it's more than 10 times uh, 2019 numbers.
And are a lot of these festivals launching online components for the first time?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And in for instance, regarding the fourth quarter, so it's October, November, December this year, uh, we have signed agreements with more than 15,000 sorry, 15 festivals. So those festivals will develop like a mix, an hybrid, like physical and online competition.
Yeah. Okay. And how does the revenue split work? How do you do that with the festivals?
It's 60-40, 60 for them, 40 for us.
Okay, cool. And so, do you think that going forward, are we going to see online components to a lot of these events?
Probably, maybe not for the Cannes, Venice. Even Venice did something like a small experiment a few years ago. or Rotterdam. But in Spain, I think those mid-size range festivals, for sure, they will develop the online part because it's important for them to reach a wide audience outside its city of happening the festival.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Like, these events are sometimes held in quite small towns, and there's a huge audience out there. I mean, Olle, you told me before about some of the festivals that you've been working with in Sweden, and I imagine that through your platform they can access a much wider audience than they could normally.
Yeah, sure. So we are currently discussing this with a number of Swedish film festivals. Many of them are, obviously only based in one city, and I think they have a huge potential to reach a wider audience in all over Sweden, especially for niche festivals that have quite a small audience in their city. I think they can be really successful online as well.
Okay. Richard, do you work much with film festivals in your digital component?
Just turn off my mute. Yes, there are festivals that participate in the Kino Marquee offerings and book our films as though they were standalone theaters. That gives the festivals essentially a year-round chance to maintain programming offerings to their most loyal supporters. And the festivals, I'd say, have accounted for roughly 10 to 20% of the total bookings that we do through Kino Marquee.
Interesting. And so, a question for all of you guys then, because I mean, one of the challenges if a festival wants to have an international reach, they can do that potentially through an online platform. But some of the strong independent art house platforms, such as the ones that you guys operate, are available only in specific territories. Have you considered teaming up at all? Maybe would this be something that could happen in the future, where you could have multiple local players putting on a kind of online component of a festival? Something you've explored? Jaume, do you want to address that one?
Keep in mind that Filmin is available also in Portugal. So the festival, because we run a festival, it's called Atlantida Film Fest this year. So the posters behind me are from the festival. Basically, the festival will take place in Spain, film in Portugal, also Mallorca. So it's a mix, physical and online festival. Plus, this year we'll collaborate alongside with CineSquare, which is a VOD platform from Macedonia, and they will host the part of the festival on 5 different countries: Greece, Serbia, Macedonia, Bulgaria, and Turkey.
That's interesting. Olle, is that something that you would consider doing?
I mean, we have discussed this in in some ways, but we haven't tried it yet. But of course, it's a very interesting proposal, and I think that it would give us the opportunity to invest in films that perhaps are too niche even for us, if we can cooperate with a number of similar platforms all over Europe, for instance.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, Richard, have you explored any collaborations with other digital platforms? You being an obvious window into the US, I imagine could be quite useful.
We're always experimenting and exploring. Right now, though, the differentiator between what we're doing and what some other platforms are doing with things like premium VOD is that the offerings that we make available through Kino Marquee are only available through the theater portals. So they're not available on a national PVOD basis, which means that the theaters are essentially the curators. So we see a day where we will be developing membership VOD programming services with the individual theaters in effect, creating their own kind of micro Netflixes, so to speak, for their own communities with films that may have played in their theaters, but other films that are appealing to the same audiences and related to the films that they show. And that's an offering that we'll syndicate to theaters on a national basis. But every theater will have its own version of the MVOD offering.
Okay, interesting. And how does Kino Marquee and Kino Now, how do they work together? I mean, is the plan to keep those as separate entities going forward?
Well, just exactly to the point, Kino Now is a national TVOD platform. We think of it sort of as the art house iTunes. Kino Lorber, my company, has a very large library of over 3,000 titles, and we release over 35 films a year theatrically and more than 300 a year digitally and in physical media, which is still a very important business in the U.S. for us. But the availability of titles on Kino Now are national. Anyone in the U.S. and sometimes Canada can watch any of those films anytime. Kino Marquee, however, is a theatrical offering with films that are not available actually on Kino Now. Those are the films that we consider first run or first release repertory titles that are only available through the curation of the theater and through the theater's portal, with half of the proceeds going to the theater. So it's a very clear differentiation between Kino Now and Kino Marquee. But Kino Marquee was built on the architecture of Kino Now, so that anyone who buys a ticket at Kino Marquee has to register very simply on Kino Now. And if they want to opt in to receive messages from Kino Now, they can do that. But the fact is that we've grown our registered user base for Kino Now from 1,000 users 2 months ago to now over 70,000 users, based on the people who are signing into Kino Now through purchasing tickets on Kino Marquee. So they're complementary but differentiated, and it's best for us to keep it that way.
Okay, cool. Quick bit of housekeeping from me to everyone who's watching. If you want to ask a question, we're going to take some at the end. You can do that through Vimeo or Facebook. If you're not watching through those platforms, I believe you can click on chat as a guest on the right-hand side of your screen, send over your question, and we will hopefully get to it. And also this conference will be available to watch as a replay on Marché de Film Online. So check that out. Gentlemen, I think we should talk a little bit about the lessons that we've learned during this period and what we think will be carried over. We're all hoping that cinemas will be reopened in the near future. We'll see what those circumstances look like and how viable they are as businesses, particularly for the art house world, which is certainly challenged. But I mean, Richard, I wanted to ask you. So certainly from my perspective, distributors and exhibitors have sometimes had slightly frosty relationships over the years, particularly on things like the subject of windowing. I mean, will the pandemic force greater collaboration, do you think?
Well, that's an important point, and I think the answer is unequivocally yes. The theaters have been very responsive and very enthusiastic about what we're doing, partly because hold on.
There's always one.
Sorry for that interruption. But the theaters are eager to do more. What we see happening, theaters also creating their own versions of what we're doing, so that we're also competing with the theaters in that they're creating their own portals. But what we expect to evolve is more of a complementary partnership with the theaters, and making available from our large library the basis for the theaters to have their own membership VOD services. That will be another growth opportunity and generate more income.
Okay. And I think windowing is a particularly interesting subject right now. And, that a lot of the headlines that we read are about how staunchly the large scale exhibitors want to stick to these windows that exist. And, behind the scenes, of course, there is a bit more of a fluid arrangement, particularly when it comes to kind of art house and independent titles. But, day and date releases, things like that. Are we likely to see more collaboration between physical releases and online going forward? I mean, I'm sure that's already happening to a large degree, but Richard, do you see that becoming more an online component, becoming just more of a standard thing for a theatrical release?
I think it's going to happen, and that's why we're calling our developing model a duplex releasing strategy, where we make the film available physically and digitally, but we let the theater decide whether they want to have that available. And again, this is strictly through their own portal. So even though it's available digitally to their audience members and subscribers, it's not available on a national basis to anyone who wants to watch it on a VOD platform. But the duplex windowing is something that's still under active discussion, whether or not it should be simultaneously offered, or whether the theaters are encouraging people to come back to the physical theater and not make the film available on a digital basis until a holdover period takes place. And so we think the most likely scenario will be a staggered release, physical first at the theater, and perhaps a week or 2 weeks later available on the theater's digital service through us or through their own portal. And that makes the most sense. But again, it's early days, and being a New Yorker, we're probably going to be one of the last to see the theaters opening in any great numbers. So we won't really know what this looks like until probably mid to late August or later.
Sure. And Olle, I mean, your part of the world is far more advanced in its dealing with the virus, though Sweden is quite a unique case in this instance. But your festival, Göteborg, is not until next January, right? So we still have a good period of time. But I'm wondering, to what extent are you thinking about further digital integration into next year's event? I mean, we keep hearing talks about second and third waves of this thing, and maybe future lockdowns. Like, are you already considering how a digital component might play a greater role next year?
Yeah, sure. So we are definitely hoping for being able to sort of normal film festival this winter, but we certainly have a digital film festival on Draken Film as a plan B, and we actually also have a outdoors summer film festival that we are doing a similar plan for, and also a kids film festival during fall that we also have a similar plan B for. So I think it's even though we're hoping that everything will go back to normal soon, I think it's the only responsible thing to do, to also plan for the worst.
Okay. And I mean, is there any fear at all that creating a very attractive and usable digital component for a film festival detracts at all from the theatrical experience? I mean, is there something quite special about people getting together to watch the premiere of a movie in one theater, whether it's a national premiere or just kind of being in that environment? It does have a kind of feeling of being a moment. Does introducing greater online components threaten to take that away at all, or do you think they're completely complementary?
So if we are to replace film festivals, at least for a moment, with digital ones, I think we really have to rethink the way we screen films on VOD, to, as you mentioned, to make it more exclusive, or to make it feel like it's happening now, whether that's a fixed time slot, the film starts at this specific moment, or if we can find different ways for audiences to interact with each other. But as VOD experience, as a Netflix or HBO experience looks like today, I don't really regard that as in any way similar to a film festival experience. So we still have a lot to do, and we have a few ideas about how to do that in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Jaume, I wanted to ask you about your platform also shows series as well as films. Um, During the lockdown, you know with all the cinemas closed, people have had to go online for their films. But of course, TV, it's still being broadcast. It's on the traditional broadcasters. It's on the streaming platforms. Have you noticed a spike in people watching movies, or is the kind of percentages of content consumption relatively similar to what it was pre-lockdown?
It's funny because the spy was on classical movies. At
Mm,
the beginning of the pandemic, so in February, at the beginning of March, people went crazy watching the end of the world kind of movies. So and series like Utopia or The Road, the movie The Road, or Perfect Sense, and something else. But I would say that by mid-March, people realized that the crisis were quite serious, and now they focus only prefer to watch classical movies, more entertaining movies, and also TV series, of course. But uh, in our platform, it's quite different from Netflix. So in our case, it's like 40% of total views are series and 60% are movies. So we are still mostly a movie film platform.
okay, interesting. Yeah. Um, let's talk a little bit about award season as well. We've got the Cannes Film Festival is taking place in the best guise they could put together this year. And there are still question marks about uh, and Venice. So with all the delays to film festivals and also the delays to award season, which are already happening now, for you guys who operate in this art house space, is there a worry about how you will badge some of these films going forward? Because I know that the Cannes label is so important, and being able to advertise a film as Golden Globe nominated, Oscar nominated, or a Toronto or Venice winner is crucial. So with all of this delay and disruption, are you worried at all about how you will kind of sell these films to audiences in the next 12 months? I know, Richard, maybe you could talk a bit about that as a distributor as well.
Well, there is a great worry in that you cannot replace the values of a physical festival with the best digital online version of it. We go to festivals as buyers, and we depend upon the interaction with a community of professionals, film critics, other exhibitors, other colleagues who are competitors sometimes, and we cumulatively come up with ideas about what makes sense, where there's buzz, what we want to pursue and buy, and so forth. So we have a very good system to capture intelligence about films that just is not replaceable with a visual version or digital festival. There's in the digital world, and this is with all due respect to what Cannes is doing and other festivals are trying to do. There's just not the dimensionality of a festival. There isn't the tactile and multi-sensory experience that makes it possible for the best decisions. I think what's going to happen in the next few months is that we're going to let the, so to speak, dust settle. We'll continue to work with the key sales agents that we have best known and longest relationships with, who themselves are terrific curators. And we'll see a flow of offerings to us, I'm sure, over the next 2 or 3 months that have come through some version of the Cannes selectivity process. And we'll pick those films, and those will be our candidates for awards going forward. But it's going to be, really a shadow of its former self. And we're hoping we'll get back to some semblance of the real festival experience going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's take a few questions from our audience. Good one to start off with. Do independent streamers get involved in co-production / pre-sales? Which is an interesting question, because there is a lot of competition. A lot of these services exist now. We have some very deep-pocketed rivals. So, do you guys use co-production or pre-sales? Anyone want to kick us off with that one?
Yes,
Well,
we co-produced our. Oh, sorry, Richard. Uh,
no, I defer to you.
uh, okay, thanks. We co-produced our first movie, the first film 6 years ago. It was Barcelona Winter Night. And since then, we co-produced 15 films. And now we are co-producing our first series.
Fantastic. Richard, you want to add some stuff to that?
The short answer is no. We don't co-produce and we don't finance, and the simple reason is because we don't need to. The art house segment of the U.S. cinema economy is a very, very small fraction of 12, $15 billion a year business, and there's a surfeit of films available to us. In that the audiences for art house cinema is very limited and set apart from the rest. So we find that there's such a great opportunity for us to acquire some of the best films that are already made and completed, that we have built our business model around only acquiring completed films. And we expect that'll continue, even though we get tempted occasionally when a trusted filmmaker comes to us with a new project. But we haven't bitten yet.
Okay. Watch this space. Olle, is similar answer for you?
Yeah, the short answer is no. Though we have actually funded films through the Göteborg Film Festival Fund, and I think at least for a VOD platform the size of ours, I think that would be a more successful model in the future as well.
Okay. I'm going to move straight on to another question here. So, can indie filmmakers submit movies directly to your platforms? I mean, Olle, do you want to stick on that one? Do you have people who watch direct submissions?
Yeah, sure. And we buy and release films that we have acquired from the producers. Not that many, but I mean it's a handful every year. So we definitely have a few of those, mostly Swedish films, but a few international as well.
Okay, cool. How about yourself, Richard? Do you ever take submissions in that way?
Well, we do, but the vast majority come through a prior curation process through sales agents and other trusted suppliers, sometimes lawyers that we work with, and production companies that we've dealt with before. But there are independent films that we look at. Although there are so many films being offered all the time, it's a question of where we can put our focus and what warrants our attention.
Yeah. Jaume, how about yourself?
Yeah, we work mostly with local distributors, international sales agents, as well as Richard and Olle. But sometimes people contact us and say, okay, we have done this film, can you watch it? And then if our teams agree and that the film will work on our platform, we try to sign an agreement with the director or producer of the film. So as an advice for art house new directors in Spain or in Europe, they can send us an email and say, okay, we have this film, maybe a small introduction, and that's it. It's easy to contact us.
There you go. Any indie filmmakers watching, do it. Send the email. Another question from the audience. What is your main model for partners? Is it more revenue share or license fees? That's an interesting question. Jaume, you wanna jump on that?
Revenue, mostly revenue. Of course, we have also with MG and flat fee, depends, but it's mostly revenue share.
Okay. Similar for you guys, Richard?
We typically, the titles on our platform are films that we've acquired mostly on an all rights basis. So we're not an open VOD platform as such at this time. We pay advances and MGs for virtually every title that we put up on our platform. We have opened the Kino Marquee platform to some third-party distributors who are spiritually aligned with us in terms of the quality art house curation that they do, and we've made our platform available to them. in which case we take a 20% fee, and the balance is split between the third-party distributor and the movie theater. But that represents only a fraction of the titles that we're putting out on Kino Marquee. For everything that's on Kino Now, it's typically a title where we've acquired all rights. We'll also be releasing the Blu-ray and DVD. We'll be releasing them in theaters physically. We'll put them up for licensing to television outlets. So it's a traditional model where we're an all rights business with the option of creating this additional revenue stream through our digital.
Olle, do you use both models?
Yeah, for most of our titles we pay an MG and a license fee for every stream.
Okay, cool. This is an interesting question. So someone else has just asked, what kind of content are you looking for at the moment? And I suppose that's, the question is within the context of this world that we're living in right now. I mean, has it changed, or are you really looking for the same things? Richard, do you want to answer that one?
We are looking for the best, highest quality independent films that have a voice, that push the envelope in terms of what cinema is and how it's experienced. We're acquiring probably a larger component of documentaries. Documentaries have always been between 30 and 40% of our schedule. Now they're closer to 50% for very good reasons, and that storytelling in the documentary format has developed very, very rapidly and has allowed lots of kind of creative experimentation, which we prize. So I say that documentaries are ascendant, and they're also, in some ways, easier to market because they self-select a community, they self-select an interest in that there's a targeted content area that you can promote to. So that's been one of the biggest changes I've noticed, and we'll continue to pursue docs.
Okay. Olle, anything different, things standing out to you in the market maybe?
So what we've realized this spring is really the power of releasing a film that's currently in theaters. So I really hope that we will be able to continue cooperating with Swedish distributors in similar ways, even during fall when theaters open again. I guess that says something about the audience's appeal for new films and fresh films.
Okay. Jaume, what's catching your eye?
What I'm not looking forward are movies about lockdown, COVID-19, pandemic, and so on. Those are the films we are not looking forward. The rest, as Richard said, high quality movies, feature films, and documentaries.
Yeah, I think we're all expecting to see plenty of those at market for the future to come.
They won't be welcome at Filmin, so.
Another audience question. So for PVOD and TVOD releases, how receptive do you think audiences are to paying a price which is close to a theatrical ticket price or maybe a festival price? Maybe Jaume, you want to talk about that?
In Spain, they are quite reluctant to pay 6 or 7 euros per VOD film. Watching a streaming a VOD film is quite expensive. And now facing this huge economical crisis, I think it will be hard to convince an audience to pay 7 euros or 8 euros for watching a film online.
Okay. Richard, how about in the States?
Kino Marquee, the virtual theatrical portal, we charge $12 for a ticket nationally. In major markets like New York and LA, probably 40% below the price that the theaters themselves charge, which is between $13 and $15. In some smaller markets, it may be 20 or 30% higher. But we make the point that by buying that ticket for $12, you have 5 days to watch the film, and you can watch it as many times as you want, and you can watch it with friends and family or whoever is in your house or home. So it's a good value, and the audiences have embraced that price point because they also feel half of it is going back to the movie theater and supporting their local cultural institution. So we think that's a sustainable model. When it comes to straight VOD, TVOD, it doesn't have the same appeal. Uh, but we're also looking at ways that we can share that kind of income with theaters, as I mentioned before, with our membership VOD offerings. But that will be something that we'll still determine soon.
Okay. And Olle, does being linked to the festival, does that mean you can kind of charge festival prices? What's your view on that?
So I think for Draken Film, we will continue to include films in our standard offer, our subscription offer, and even when we release theatrical films on our VOD platform, we include them in the standard offer, and we simply take the hit. I think we actually lose some money for some films for every stream, but I think it's worth it to create that value for the subscribers. So from my perspective, we will probably continue with our SVOD model.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. So, gentlemen, we've just got a couple of minutes. Let me wrap up on one final question. There are many streaming services in existence now. Some of them offer different things. Some of them offer quite similar things. What do we think is going to make, from an art house and independent context, what is going to make a streaming service work? I mean, we've heard the word curation a few times during this panel. Do we think that's important? Is it wealth of choice? Just what do we think is the one thing that will be a key differentiator for an independent service going forward? Richard, do you want to answer?
I will say one word is curation. And it's curation managed by the cultural institution of the local cinemas who have a role to play beyond what they ever dreamed in terms of merely being a movie theater. Curation is the key.
Jaume, you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And exclusive content, and I would add like a large catalog, like plenty of choice for the subscriber.
Okay. Olle, any extra thoughts on that?
Yeah, curations. I mean, during the spring we have let Swedish film directors and also cinemas make their own curations and collections on our platform, and those have many times been the most successful collections on Draken Film. So I really think that's key.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we're pretty much about out of time now. So thanks, guys, for that. That's super interesting. I mean, just hearing about how you've been working with both cinemas and festivals, I think is fascinating, because those live events and venues have been so badly hit by this pandemic. So it's been great to hear that through online innovation, we've been able to support the full cycle of the business. So hopefully that kind of collaboration will keep going forward. So I guess it's just leaves me time to say thanks very much for joining us, and hope you all have a great Cannes and buy some fantastic movies which we'll watch on your platforms going forward. So thanks very much, guys. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you, and see you in a non-virtual Cannes next year, hopefully.
Yeah, and maybe, hopefully, if not before.
Yes.
Okay, cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we are out.